Africa, we are currently experiencing a lot of critical environmental and social challenges that requires an urgent action to be taken. In fact, according to the United Nations, our continent is projected to reach a population of 2.5 billion people by 2050. So in the next 20-something years, we have almost 2.5 billion people. And that means that there will be a corresponding need for increase in food production, because once you have more people, you need to produce more food in order to keep them. However, the continent is also facing a lot of climate crisis. And it is evident that when it comes to pollution, Africa only produces very insignificant, right? The continent only produces just about 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions, just 3%. But meanwhile, we face the much more severe impact of climate change. So whether there's excessive rain, there's drought, there's invasion of pests and diseases, rising temperature, Africa has the most vulnerable population, and we face the harsh effects of climate change. What this does to us is that because the continent is largely driven, or most of the inhabitants of the continent are mostly into agriculture, they are mostly affected by this impact of climate change. Now, in addition to that, we face several challenges. First has to do with even the issue of land degradation, where the evidence suggests that more than 65% of African lands is affected by degradation. In fact, in Ghana here, we know the situation about illegal mining and how it is taking over all of our agricultural lands. In addition to that, we also know the issue of food insecurity in Africa, which shows that about 282 million Africans are undernourished. This is according to the FAO. And this is because our agricultural systems are mostly reliant on unsustainable farming systems. It appears that now there is a whole shift by African governments towards a particular system of farming. Either it is monocropping, where you see large acreages of the cultivation of just one particular crop without no mixture or no diversity. We also are witnessing a lot of heavy application of chemicals on our soil. So all these kind of practices stress the land. And while the land is stressed, it leads to soil erosion and also have the impact of reducing the fertility of the soil. Now, if you go to a lot of our brothers and sisters in the northern part of the country, what they tell you is that their land is beyond redemption. So if they don't apply chemicals to their land, they are unable to do or have any meaningful harvest. Aside that, I also spoke about our contribution to climate change, and the fact that there are also environmental and climate challenges. One of the key things has to do with the emissions. So there is we know we have the greenhouse gas emissions, and we have the short-lived climate pollutants, particularly methane, which we do particularly based on burning, because we do a lot of burning in Africa. A lot of vehicles that we use, they produce a lot of carbon, which is not healthy. And even our agricultural production, because there's evidence that there's methane emission from rice and then those who even rear livestock. There's evidence that they have methane, they produce methane. All these things that we do, it also contributes to increasing. It also contributes to increasing the emissions that we release into the atmosphere, which also has both public and health hazards, in addition to the effect on our cultural landscape. And also, there's also the issue of the biodiversity loss, where in Africa, we are losing our biodiversity at a very high and alarming rate. Now, when we come to Ghana, we all know the role of agriculture in Ghana and the role it plays. It's the backbone of the economy, contributes over 21.4% of GDP, and employs about 40% of our population, who are normally dominated by smallholder farmers. Most of the work we do are rural, and the role of women is very pronounced in the work that we do. However, despite all these things that we do, the sector is facing a lot of challenges. And people say that the sector doesn't appear to be resilient. And I'll go into that very soon. So currently, if you were to ask me or ask any farmer here that what is the state of agriculture or what is the state of farming in Ghana, it is characterized by some key features that I've listed here. First has to do with the fact that there's an extremely high cost of production, because our farmers here rely a lot on synthetic fertilizer, mechanization. We spend so much, because when it comes to the fertilizer, most of it are not manufactured in Ghana, they are imported. And once you know that our exchange rate is not doing well, what it means is that you have to spend more to purchase fertilizer, and that's what is happening. Because we also rely so much on tilling our land, the tractor services, we also hire the services. Now, if you want to even till 1 acre of land, the average price you pay is not less than 400 Ghana cedis for an acre. That's what is happening now. Now, and even issues around pests and diseases, they are still high. People who are producing cereals and maize are always complaining about how along the line they have pests affecting them. In addition to the high cost of production, we also know about the impact of climate change that I spoke about generally for the African continent. But in Ghana, we experience it in various forms. So we know that now there are very extreme temperatures. So at a point, it's extremely hot. At a point, it's extremely cold. When it comes to our rainfall, the patterns are now, they are quite unpredictable. We all remember when we were in school, we all knew when we have rainy season and dry season. Now in the dry season, we even have heavy rains that you are unsure what is happening. Apart from that, we also know that even in terms of the intensity of the rains, it has changed. There are times that it rains so severely, and even there are times that for farmers who have planted, there are periods where they expect the sun to allow for tasseling and for the crops to be able to, the fruits to appear. But what happens is that it rains at that period, destroying their crops. And for those who plant, knowing that the rain should come, they don't have the rain. And we all remember what happened in northern part of the country. In fact, it's still happening. Those who did the dry season farming, they are not getting rains. And that's a major problem. So we know the issue of I spoke about the extreme weather periods, outbreak of crops and pest diseases, increasing in post-harvest losses. Because also account for it. When you are ready to harvest and you want the sun, and the sun doesn't come, you lose your crops. That's post-harvest losses. That's what you're also experiencing. and all this stuff. And all this now is a way of impacting the agricultural production. And of course, the issue of the illegal mining that I spoke about. So what does that mean? That means that essentially our agricultural systems are not able to withstand shocks. And the shocks are in different forms, as I listed. The shocks with regards to even external factors. Currently in Ghana here, when we hear that there is a war in a different country, it has an impact on us because we rely on other countries for fertilizer. When there is too much rain, it has an impact on our production. When there is less rain, it has an impact on our production. When the exchange rate is not doing well, it has an impact on our. So you realize that the agricultural system is vulnerable. Any small shift anywhere impacts us. So it means that our systems are not resilient. We are not able to withstand shocks in the agricultural sector. And it's because of a lot of the practices that we do. If you are in a system where you rely so much on external inputs, then definitely when there are shocks, it will affect you. If you're in a system where you rely so much on the rain, when there are shocks, it will affect you. If you're in a system where you rely so much on chemical fertilizer, when there's a shock, it will affect you. And basically that's what you're experiencing in the country now. So a slight change in any of these factors has a way of affecting our agricultural production. Now, to have a resilient food system, it means that you should be able to, your food system should have the capacity to provide sufficient, appropriate, and accessible food for all in the face of various and unforeseen disturbances. So it means that we should, if you want to have a resilient food system, it should be in such a way that no matter what happens, we are able to withstand it. If you go to some countries, they put up buildings which are able to withstand earthquakes. So we call them resilient cities. So when there are shocks, they are safe. But if you do not put in place mechanisms around the kind of system you are in, then a slight shock. And that's why I listed COVID-19, Russia and Ukraine, all these things that happened. COVID-19 was external, it happened somewhere, but we felt the impact here, even on our food systems. Russia and Ukraine crisis, they are still fighting. We are still feeling the effect. Drought, northern Ghana, there are little rains. I can assure you, within the next 2 or 3 months, when I'm going to buy maize, you spend more. Because there are evidence that farmers are just producing about 2 or 3 bags of maize for 2 acres. Meanwhile, normally for 1 acre, you should go not less than 8 or 9 bags. People are now getting 3 bags for 2 acres. So in the next few months, you can imagine what's happening to the price of maize. And that's what's happening because we are not resilient. So what does agroecology do to build that resilience? 1, what agroecology does is to promote sustainable farming techniques. How does it do that? 1, through crop diversification, which encourages the use of diverse crop varieties to enhance productivity, soil health, and ecosystem resilience. Crop diversification helps to reduce the risk of crop failure, enhances biodiversity, improves food security by providing multiple sources of income and nutrition for farmers. So if you go to the north where they are now used to growing only maize, imagine they done maize and it's a crop with beans. There's drought, your maize is spoiled, maybe your beans will do well. But because of the notion of monocropping, that's what is happening. So what agroecology does is that because it promotes crop diversification, what is that as a farmer, instead of having just one source of income, you have multiple sources, and what it does to you. 2, agroforestry. So by integrating trees into your agric landscapes to improve soil fertility, sequester carbon, that's carbon sequestration, and enhance water conservation. So agroforestry supports biodiversity by providing habitats for different species while protecting the soil from erosion. We all know what some trees does to the soil by holding the soil compact. That when it rains, it reduces the risk of what? Erosion. And also we all know during our primary days studying science about the role of trees in enhancing rainfall. If you go to people's farm and they've cut all the trees down, you are reducing the risk of evaporation that allows for rainfall. So one of the things that agroecology can do to enhance resilience is through agroforestry. 3, soil management. Implementing practices such as crop rotation, cover cropping, and conservation tillage helps to maintain soil fertility, improve water retention, and prevent soil degradation. One of the key things that as a farmer is your most important factor of production is your soil. If you are able to protect your soil well, it means that you can do your work for a long time. If you are not able to protect your soil, then you are in trouble. So even a lot of people say that for agroecology, the most important factor here is about soil management. How do you make sure that your soil is relevant to you in the next 5-10 years time? Where your soil becomes so unfertile that if you don't apply fertilizer, you can't use your soil. So what if every year the price of fertilizers are going up and you can't afford? It means you can't plant. So how do you maintain the fertility of your soil? It's a very crucial thing. That's one of the things that agroecology does. So with practices like crop rotation, today you do crop A, tomorrow you do crop B. Every crop has a role it plays to enhance soil fertility. Cover cropping. When you slash the bushes, what happens to them? Do you throw them away? Do you bend them? Or you cover the crops with them? That's the way of protecting the soil from erosion and from excessive sunlight. It has a way of also retaining water in the soil. Now, when you put in these practices, it has a way of building your soil up and ensuring that you as a farmer, for the next 5 or 10 years, you're able to rely on the soil for production of your food. Again, what does it do? It reduces our reliance on chemical inputs. I also mentioned the fact that if we seem to be so much reliant on inorganic fertilizer, on this particular chemical, what's the name? Condemn. We are so much reliant on those things. But even evidence suggests that even the prices of those things are going up every day. Now for the condemn, some of you still buy it, even though they've told you to stop, but you still buy it. The condemn. Now if you are buying one, you are not paying less than what? 90 cedis or so, right? Meanwhile, that thing used to be 25 cedis about 2 or 3 years ago. But every year you want to rely on something like that. You are destroying your soil. In addition to that, you are spending more. When it comes to the inorganic fertilizer, it's the same thing. Some few years ago, fertilizer 25 bag was about 30 something cedis. Today it's about 400 cedis. Because all of these things, we don't manufacture them here, we import them. So our reliance on those things means that if we are relying on Russia or Ukraine or whichever country for phosphate, and then there's a crisis there, they will either reduce the production or they will limit the production. And what happens is that if you still want to import them, you have to pay more. And that's exactly what is happening. So what it means is that if you are not able to afford, and because you are dependent on them, then you can't do your production and produce a lot of yields. So it means that your agricultural production is not able to support you, the farmer, because it is not resilient. What agroecology does is that when you are able to do this, you are reducing your reliance on those inputs, you are reducing the costs you are incurring. And it means that if it gets to a point where majority of Ghanaian farmers are doing agroecology or practicing it, when there's a shock in Russia, Ukraine, we don't care, because we have our systems in place to ensure that we produce sustainably. Then another key thing that it does is about farmers' engagement and participation. Agroecology goes beyond only practices. It is also a movement where people with the same mind, same ideology, same objective move to do things together. And it encourages what we call a co-creation. Because for agroecology, you don't need someone from, you are in Tamale producing a cowpea variety, which is good for you and your soil and your climate. You don't need someone from Accra to bring a different variety that's planted in your place. So for agroecology, you're also protecting the kind of systems that are peculiar to your environment and to your location. And as a country, we seem to be losing that a lot. We are urbanizing, or I don't know how, I'm not getting the right word, but we are finding a way where we are losing our own traditional indigenous food systems to foreign foods. And that approach is not sustainable. Because as I said, if it gets to a point, whoever is producing it suffers a shock. Because you are relying on it, it also affects you. But if what you are producing is peculiar to your environment, there's no way the shock will affect you, because that's what you are used to. So the issue about farmers' engagement, farmers' participation is so critical. And that's a key role that agroecology plays. So you realize that when, as a people, we are able to adapt or adopt agroecology, essentially we are building up a system where our food systems are in our own hands. And that's why even for us as peasant farmers, one of the things that we even push, in addition to being resilient, is about food sovereignty. That you have control of the food that you are producing. When sometimes when they talk about food security, people talk about, oh, the food should be available. So whether the food is coming from Brazil or UK, doesn't matter, once available. No. The food that we are talking about should be a food that is available and produced right in our country. And that's the essence of food sovereignty. That the factors of production, the seed, the fertilizer, the agro inputs you are going to use are things that are produced locally, because you have the capacity to do that.